Okay, so starting with business challenges. So about 5 or 6 years back, we started thinking about data management in the scientific disciplines a little bit more intensely. And like I said earlier, we were trying to sort of solve challenges, not at an individual level, but more of at an enterprise or organizational level. So this slide is probably, probably resonates with most of the folks in the audience. The Gartner actually coined this term called dark data. And what the term's definition is it's data that exists in large enterprises, but it's hard to find because you as a user who's trying to find the data may or may not be aware that data first of all exists. Two, you may or may not know where it exists. Three, you may or may not have access to those systems, those data repositories, and what have you. And lastly, even if you get access to the system, maybe you don't even know or have the training on how to use the system. So there's a lot of challenges around in large enterprises, especially about how do you go about finding data that may be relevant to the work that you're doing, but you don't know where and if that data even exists. So what do we do in these situations? We resort to what we lovingly know as Sneakernet, right? Or call a friend. So basically, you'll pick up the phone, or in the digital era, maybe send an email or a Teams message, what have you, and basically ask your colleague who you think may have better access to that data or information before you can actually access it or analyze it. So we had the same issues and challenges when it comes to finding data, and so we had the dark data challenge. We also saw that the trend was changing. So over the years, historically, we all grew by implementing, electronic systems, your chromatography data management systems, or your lab notebook systems, or your LIMS systems. And the primary purpose of implementation of these electronic repositories was so that you could actually manage your data better, right? About 5 or 6 years back, we started sort of seeing the trend was changing a lot more towards, I want to actually analyze my data. I don't even care or need to be concerned about how the data is being managed or where it's being managed, right? So from a user perspective of data, we were seeing that people were trying to sort of get away from the manual, the redundant, the burden of managing data, tagging your data, metadata management, those things. And they were trying to get more into, give me this data so I can analyze it and actually gain new insights. So we had this chasm that we were trying to cross, and our systems and data repositories weren't adequately sort of capable of supporting that transition. The other thing we realized was, in a typical large life sciences biotech pharmaceutical company, there's largely speaking the product flow that moves from the left to right on this screen, right? So your products go through research, and then they go to development, and then eventually get transitioned into commercial manufacturing. And in each of these sort of three towers, if you may, there's a lot of data / models that we generate to support the progression of that product through the life cycle. Now, I would say that we were probably also seeing some sort of information flow along with the product flow going from research through development to commercial manufacturing, although there were a lot of gaps and it was not automated. What was truly missing was the feedback loop, which is shown on the bottom of the screen. A lot of times we could design the next product much better, or learn more about what kind of late stage issues we ran into on the last product that went through this life cycle. If we could actually only get access to the data from commercial manufacturing or late-stage development back into research. So the feedback loop of information flow wasn't quite automated or robust enough. And then one more challenge was there was a lot of sort of focus on, the quality of data, because it's not just enough to store data and make it accessible. We also want to make sure that the data, when, if I generate some data and my colleague finds it, 6 months later or 6 years later, the context around how the data was collected and captured and created needs also to be clear enough. And so, if you recall, there was a landmark paper that sort of introduced the principles of FAIR. And so we wanted to make sure that we build a system. We called it Scientific Data Cloud, which I'll talk about next, was compliant with the FAIR principles, right? So we wanted to make sure that we solve these challenges using the FAIR principles and keeping the FAIR principles at the back of our mind. And lastly, why now? So about 5-6 years back, we started thinking about these challenges, like I said, but what was driving us towards that? So, data integrity, if you remember, was increasingly becoming more and more prevalent. Regulatory agencies were asking for original raw data files and not just the final results. Quality, they said, was of concern if data could not be found quickly during inspections. Speed, right? So in order to support simultaneous acceleration of multiple products through the pipeline, we had to eliminate redundant tasks such as data management from our scientists' sort of workflow. And the belief was also that rapid access to high quality data would enable also the increased use of in silico predictive models and tools as well. So that was also another sort of driving factor for us to start solving these challenges. And lastly, new insights were needed to advance the portfolio. The expectation was if you could actually start collecting data from multiple techniques and make that accessible from one interface, one system, what have you, then new insights could be gleaned from all this historical data that we had access to, but it was hard to sort of get connected to.